What is up, guys? Welcome into episode number 109 of the Loose Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Hannaford, tonight being joined by Dylan Hampel, by Kyle Siksta. If this is your first time, or if it's your 109th time watching us on the Loose Sports Talk, we appreciate you, whether it is on STL Sports Central's YouTube channel, or if you're an OG on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you for being a part of this with us. Cardinals baseball about a month into the season now in St. Louis. Despite flirting with that 500 record, still a couple of games ahead of it, and a very interesting subject here tonight, as you could argue the Cardinals may be nearing a little bit of an early season crossroads with the tough stretch of baseball that they are currently in. Going to be a lot to discuss regarding this 17-game stretch. Excited for it. Dylan, I'll start with you. How you doing tonight?
I am just peachy, Ethan. I have successfully made it through the 800 tornado warnings that occurred yesterday, Monday, and I hope the rest of you did as well without any hail damage or anything like that. And I'm excited because it's the first time the three of us are on an episode together. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you guys. And likewise, I did make it through the tornadoes as well. So hope everyone out there is all right.
I bet Kyle got some sick views from his spot
I did.
Of the clouds with the arch and the Mississippi in the background. Am I right?
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. Unfortunately, I was at work last night, so I didn't get to take it in as it was going, like the main storm was happening. But as the day progressed, it was kind of cool to see it develop from my view. So
certainly. Well, you could argue that the St. Louis Cardinals pitching to start off the year has been a storm, not a good one, a bad one, because there's been a lot of bad stuff going on regarding the quality of pitching. Still, despite that, St. Louis in large part has been able to tread water, but that's what tonight's conversation is mostly going to be around. During this stretch of games where the Cardinals do not have an off day, which started on last Friday against the Seattle Mariners. They played 3. They're currently playing in this series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. From last Friday, 17 straight games with no off days. And it's coming against good quality baseball teams as well, guys. We learned how good Seattle's going to be. They swept the Cardinals over the weekend, currently facing off against a young Pittsburgh Pirates team that has some good quality pitching. Has fared well so far for St. Louis. We'll see how the last couple of games of the series go. And then it gets very difficult with the Los Angeles Dodgers and Milwaukee Brewers coming into town. And then you travel out west to face off against the San Diego Padres. That's the first stint of May. It doesn't get much easier following that, though there is a couple of off days in there. They'll travel to face off against the Sacramento Athletics, I guess is what it is technically now. And then they'll be back home against the Kansas City Royals, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then more central showdowns on the road against Cincinnati, Milwaukee, back home against Chicago to finish out the month of May. It is safe to say that the schedule is intensifying here in the latter part of April and the early, or I should say pretty much the entirety of the month of May. And we're going to have a good opportunity to learn a lot about this St. Louis Cardinals team, Kyle.
Yeah, it's about time we got some NL Central play, right? Only took into the late stages of April to face the Pirates in our first NL Central series, but it's a rough 17-game stretch here. Like you mentioned, the Mariners made it to the ALCS last year. We saw what they were able to do, sweeping the Cardinals, unfortunately, at Busch. But it doesn't get any easier with the Pirates. We have the Dodgers coming to town this weekend coming up. You know, they're never easy, the 2-time defending champions. And then San Diego, and I believe Milwaukee is the other 2 teams ahead with no off days. So it's going to be a challenge. And like you said, we're going to learn a lot about it.
It feels like the majority of the conversation as far as how can the Cardinals try and survive this stretch, it's going to have to do with the pitching. And I don't think that there is a better example than what we saw on Saturday afternoon, where Matthew Liberatore faced off against one of the top pitchers in Major League Baseball in Brian Wu. And the Cardinals offense was able to tag Wu. They didn't just tag him, they ambushed him. They scored 7 earned runs, 9 hits against Brian Wu. First time that Wu in his Major League career has thrown 3 or less innings and has given up that many earned runs. So the Cardinals in rare company right there, in their own company, you could even say. But even despite all of that, Matthew Liberatore, a very difficult outing, a disappointing outing, only going 3 1/3 innings for the Cardinals. I know that there was a lot of bullpen issues as well in that game, but guys, it starts with the rotation. They're the ones that set up your bullpen for success. They're the ones that put them in the place to be able to finish out games. And early in the year, the Cardinals' starting rotation has been, I guess the word to say is disappointing. That's not to say that it has been terrible in its entirety, but I think that there are some people in this rotation that have left you, I guess, a little bit disappointed with how they have started off the year. Has there been any surprises for you guys on an individual standpoint here in the early going of 2026 with what we have seen pitching-wise? I'll start with you, Kyle.
In terms of surprises in a good way, I'm going to start with McGreevy. He's probably been the best starting pitcher that the Cardinals have had. His ERA is under 3. I know there were concerns with the velo in the first few starts where that was down as opposed to his 2025 numbers. He tends to be a 92, 93, 94 mile an hour guy, and he was sitting around 90. But despite that, he's still getting outs. He's still going deep into games. So I'd have to say McGreevy has got to be the best surprise. Not that we didn't expect him to be good, of course, but as we start to see that velo increase even more, which we've seen over the past couple starts, I'm hoping he continues to just get better. I know people are saying that he's going to regress. He's getting lucky. He's getting hit hard. But the fact is he's going 6 innings and he's pitching well. He's getting outs. McGreevy's got to be the biggest surprise in a good way so far, I'd have to say.
Dylan, anyone that you've been surprised by their start to the year, good or bad?
I'm going to have to say Matthew Liberatore. He was pegged as hopefully the number 1 guy this season. He was your opening day starter, and he, kind of fizzled out toward the end of the year last season in his first real full major league season at the big league level, being a full-time starter, but he still had over 150 strikeouts on the year for last season, I believe. And I think he had added a couple pitches over the offseason, and so he was a guy that I think a lot of fans had high hopes for coming into the year to kind of lead the way, and he's been one of the worst qualified starters statistically so far in the early goings. I mean, he's only had 6 starts so far, but through 30 1/3 innings pitched, he's at almost a 5 ERA, and he has 19 strikeouts and 11 walks, which isn't great. And as you mentioned, he got chased out of that start against Seattle, which is – you can't ask for more run support from the Cardinals offense, especially against a guy like Brian Wu, as you mentioned. So I don't know if between him and May, those are probably the 2 largest, head scratchers of, man, why are they off to the starts that they're off to? But was there anybody else that stuck out to you, Ethan, other than who we mentioned?
I think that when you look collectively at the starting rotation, you look at the numbers and you say, yep, this averages out to be about a 4 or a 5 collectively in your rotation. They don't really have that upper end of a starting pitching rotation that a team needs in order to be successful. Now, once again, let me just preface by saying that we know that this Cardinals team wasn't expected to contend or compete, and that hasn't changed. This is a rebuilding year. This is a year where the Cardinals are going to be giving these young guys opportunity, and that is what we have seen in the early going. Matthew Liberatore has been, in my opinion, the biggest disappointment by far of this starting rotation, just based off of what we saw in the early part of 2025. I expected a lot of the mechanical issues that came later in the year. Specifically, we assumed was around exhaustion, fatigue from never having to deal with a full Major League 162 before. But a lot of that early season success that we saw in 2025 has not returned like at least I was hoping it would, like I thought it would. I think Dustin May, the first few starts of the year were not very good, but he has settled in quite nicely. I think he has a sub-2 ERA in his last 4 starts now for the Cardinals. So I don't have any concerns for Dustin May, and I didn't to start the year either. So I'm not super concerned about May. I think more so collectively, it's the lack of quality that you've been able to get 1 through 5. Right now, the Cardinals don't have that guy that they're able to rely on every 5th day and say, yep, he's our guy. We know that he's going to be able to go out there, perform, and secure a win. The biggest issue for this Cardinals rotation right now has been their inability to strike hitters out. They are currently last in Major League Baseball in strikeouts per 9 innings with 6.2. Their strikeouts per walk ratio is not good either. It's bottom 5 in baseball. They are at the bottom of way too many categories currently in Major League Baseball. The expected ERA is at 5.43. That is 30th in Major League Baseball. Their fielder independent pitching, their FIP, is at 28th in baseball. Their expected FIP is at 27th in baseball. Their home runs to fly ball ratio is in the bottom 5 in baseball. Their wins above replacement is last in baseball. Their ERA minus is 27th in baseball. The point being is that collectively, it just has not been good enough. And, when you look at starting rotations in Major League Baseball, no team is going to have 5 guys that are probably top 3s in every single rotation in Major League Baseball, excluding maybe the Los Angeles Dodgers. Maybe you could have said that about the Phillies going into the year. You have to be able to have some flexibility in the caliber of pieces that you have. And right now, the Cardinals just don't have that. We understand why they don't have it. But in order for St. Louis to be more successful, they're going to need to have some better quality from their starting pitching. That's something we haven't been able to see early in the year. The bullpen has its own issues, but when your starting pitching isn't setting up your bullpen for success, like they haven't been able to do too many times this year, you're going to have a hard time. Thoughts, Dylan?
And you could even add a couple of categories to the struggles. They're dead last also in total strikeouts, and they're not close. There's a 10 strikeout margin between 30th and 29th that the Cardinals own to themselves, and they're also bottom 5 in total earned runs and bottom 6 as a staff in total hits allowed. So as you said, you're not setting your bullpen up for success, and we're already seeing some fatigue, I feel like, at least from the standpoint of our left-handed pitchers. You only have two lefties coming out of the pen. I heard Ricky Horton talking about it, how much you have to lean on those two, and Jojo Romero and Justin Brule in terms of the bullpen not having a third lefty, or having to go to your bullpen so often so early on. It has become an issue, and we're not even 20% of the way through the season. So definitely something to figure out. It's, they always go in tandem, the starting rotation and the bullpen. I guess my question to you guys, my curiosity is just, do you think this is just an early season blip from the pitching staff? Do you think this is a coaching issue from Dusty Blake and all the pitching guys? Do you think this is just execution, or the guy, the people we have not having the right stuff? I mean, Ethan, you kind of talked about, we don't really have a true number one guy. We have a mixture of 4s and 5s. What do you guys think has been the driver behind this pitching staff woes?
Kyle?
I mean, when you look at the staff, they're not a bunch of guys that are going to strike guys out, and that's just as simple as it is. Dustin May probably has the highest ceiling out of anyone in this rotation, and while he's been good, you kind of talked about that, Ethan, about how Dustin May has settled in after those 2 rough starts. He's actually, outside of McGreevy, probably the guy I'm most confident in moving forward. He probably has that highest ceiling, like I said. When you look at this rotation, Pallante, outside of his last start in Seattle, he's not a strikeout guy. Leahy can be. We saw him strike out quite a few guys last night in Pittsburgh. But, when you look at this staff, it's not a surprise that they're going to be in last in strikeouts and last in all those statistics and expected statistics. I'm not blaming Dusty. I mean, these are the guys. They are who they are. They pitch to contact. That's the style of play that these guys have. When you look at the minor league system, that's when things change, right? You have some guys that are developing that are going to come around in a couple of years that aren't going to be these pitch to contact guys. It's going to be a change of style in terms of who the Cardinals are and what they want to be about. But in the right now, these guys are pitch to contact guys, and it is what it is. It just makes it that much more impressive that we're looking at a Cardinals team over 500 despite those bad pitching statistics.
Cardinals starting pitching collectively 19th in baseball in batting average on balls in play, 288. So in the bottom part of the league, just about the bottom third of the league in that stat category as well. Dylan, to answer your question, I think that this totally matches up to where we expect this team to be in large part, this rotation to be in large part. I think Dustin May probably is going to carry your starting rotation, as you mentioned, Kyle. Kyle Leahy is going to take time. It's been a little bit slower, I think, than people thought. which I don't know why, where he's 5-6 starts in, and there's already people ready to be done with the starting pitching experiment. It's way too soon for that. We kind of know what Andre Pallante is at this point. The other ones would be, I guess, Matthew Liberatore, who if there was anyone that I'm kind of scratching my head about early in the year, it's him. But once again, he's still so young in his career. It's just going to take time. So I'm not ultra panicky about any of these guys. I think that there certainly is room for improvement, but to say that they're in a place that absolutely shocks me, I don't think is fair to say at all. I think this is pretty realistic when you look at just how young this team was, lack of experience, excluding Dustin May. Even he doesn't have loads of it. So it certainly is an interesting spot. But, and you said it just a second ago, Dylan, they have to be able to transition well into the bullpen. And far too often it feels like there isn't guys that are able to go deep enough. And you mentioned also the left-handed pitching, or should I say the lack of it. They have to be able to take care of their left-handed pitchers better than they've been able to in the early going. So it's going to be really interesting to see how exactly they continue from this point on, because at least this weekend, it kind of did look like the bullpen, you're thinking, crap, you're starting a 17-game stretch where your bullpen is already, to the looks of it, kind of gassed. Where do you go from here? Well, the Cardinals are going with a 6-man rotation this week. Hunter Dobbins will be making his St. Louis Cardinals debut on Thursday against Paul Skeens and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Dobbins was acquired in the offseason in the Wilson Contreras trade. He was rehabbing during the offseason, during the early parts of spring, from a torn ACL that he experienced last spring, and that is why he wasn't a part of this major league rotation to start off the season. Well, he has gone through his rehab. He has gone through his 30 days in Memphis to build himself up, and now he is here. I am super excited about what Hunter Dobbins can bring to this rotation. That isn't to say that he is going to be the saving grace, but when you go back to a rotation like the Cardinals did last year, it was just so mighty thin. They did not have a guy in Hunter Dobbins that they desperately needed last year. Now they have that, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see what exactly Dobbins can do for this rotation. What are your guys' thoughts on the Cardinals' addition of Hunter Dobbins to the starting rotation?
I'm excited too. He came over in the Contreras trade, so I'm excited to see the return on that, so to speak, early on. And as you said, it's a breath of fresh air being able to go to a 6-man rotation comfortably. It was, even parts of 2024 where all we had was Michael McGreevy at the AAA level, and then after he was up with the team and we needed more pitching in the starting 5, we were kind of SOL. So I think that there's a potential for him to maybe work his way into the 5-man rotation eventually, but I don't know. It may just be he's part of the 17 game. I think we're in game 5 right now. As today is Tuesday, we're in game 5 of 17 straight, and so I'm wondering if they'll keep the 6-man rotation beyond this 17-game stretch of having no days off, or if this is just a temporary thing. It would obviously depend on how well he performs, but if there's continued struggles from the other 5, especially Kyle Leahy, you mentioned as he came over from the bullpen last season and is experimenting starting this year. It's still pretty early, as you said, but he would be someone to circle, I guess, if Dobbins performs well, but that's a long way away from now.
Let's start with this because I want to get into this conversation. We haven't seen Hunter Dobbins pitch in a St. Louis Cardinals uniform during the regular season yet, but based off of what we have seen from him in his major league career up to this point, his numbers, what he's been able to do, I guess I don't take much stock in AAA in the early going of the year, but based on his track record compared to where the Cardinals are right now, Kyle, do you think, without having seen him pitch in a Cardinal uniform yet, do you think that Hunter Dobbins will be a part of this 5-man rotation once they elect to move back to a 5 from the 6-man?
It's a good question. I think he really has to perform during this 17-game stretch if he wants to leapfrog over Andre Pallante, leapfrog over Kyle Leahy. I mean, those are guys that the Cardinals have rolled with for some time now. They're their guys. They want to have them in the rotation. Dobbins seems to be the odd man out, but like you said, Ethan, he's phenomenal depth. We're one injury away from Dobbins coming right into that rotation, and he's someone that you feel comfortable taking over if that were to happen. We talked about last year, if there was an injury among one of those starting 5, who do you go to? I mean, obviously once McGreevy came into the rotation, that is, there's not anyone in AAA last year that you felt comfortable going to. At least I didn't feel comfortable going to, where now it feels like you have a little bit more depth. You can go to Hunter Dobbins. Maybe he impresses incredibly in this stretch, and then you have no choice but to leave him in. But I think he's probably on the outside looking in. And when you look later in the season, maybe Dobbins is someone who works in regularly, or he's someone in another stretch later down the season that you give spot starts to. But in terms of May and June and the immediate future, Dobbins is probably here just right now, but we'll see what happens. And by the way, what an intro back to Major League Baseball. Here's Paul Skeens for you, Hunter Dobbins.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding about that. Here's my question for you. How do we know the Cardinals want Andre Pallante in this rotation? If they haven't had depth the past couple of years, how do we know that that is their top preference right now? When you look traditionally at what Hunter Dobbins has been able to do, I would argue it certainly was better than what Pallante did last year. Now it's relatively small sample sizes up to this point, but I'm not sold on either way yet. On it, it's a slam dunk yes, it's a slam dunk no. I do agree that a lot of it's going to be dependent on how Dobbins looks during this stretch, but I'll say this. I think that even if Andre Pallante looks good during this upcoming stretch, if Hunter Dobbins looks super sharp, I think that they'll be much more inclined to put him into the rotation than they would be to keep Pallante in there. And I think it ultimately has to do with the trajectory of long term. I think that if Hunter Dobbins wouldn't have been rehabbing from a torn ACL, he's probably in the major league rotation, if you had to ask me, just based off of what we had seen previously in his career from him and the season that Andre Pallante was coming off of. Now, Dylan, you also mentioned Kyle Leahy and the question mark that he is, and this is kind of where I want this conversation to go for the next couple of minutes. We just got Kyle's thoughts a moment ago. Dylan, how do you see Hunter Dobbins and the direction the Cardinals could go with him? Do you see him in that Michael McGreevy role that we saw last year, kind of like Kyle does? Or do you think that he could be an impact piece and get put into this rotation, or should I say into the 5-man rotation relatively quickly?
As you said, we haven't seen him play a game in a Cardinals uniform at the major league level, so this is all speculation. Of
course,
I would have to guess that it's more temporary. I mean, I would love it if he surprised everyone and outcompeted and earned some spots, but I think that it would take some desperation and some very poor performing from Kyle Leahy or Andre Pallante or even Matthew Liberatore for one of them to be sent back down to Memphis. I mean, even worse than what we've seen. I mean, all three of those guys have an ERA north of 4.2 at minimum, and Kyle Leahy's over 5.5 ERA right now. So I think it would have to take something seismic for Hunter Dobbins to be in this long-term rotation for the remainder of the season. But I mean, Andre Pallante hasn't exactly been stellar for sure. I think he has more days behind him in a Cardinals uniform than ahead of him, but we shall see. That's the fun part of baseball, is guys can surprise you out of nowhere. So I might be wrong and Hunter Dobbins comes up and shoves, but I'll have to see it first.
Let's not forget that Hunter Dobbins was a part of the opening day rotation for the Boston Red Sox in 2025, a rotation that was expected to be a playoff team. They ended up being a playoff team, but because of his injury, he had to miss the remainder of the season from the point that he went down. I'm going, listen, like I said, this is very like premature because he hasn't even pitched yet, and it could go really rough. And they could come to the conclusion that Hunter Dobbins is not ready yet. But if Hunter Dobbins proves that he can be a 5 to 6 inning guy and hold his own, it would not surprise me if he finds a way into this 5-man rotation. And if the point of 2026 is you're thinking long-term vision, is Andre Pallante a part of your long-term vision for the organization? I don't personally think he is. I think everyone else has the ability to be, and that's why I don't think that Kyle Leahy is going to leave this rotation, because it's been good enough. It was once again good enough on Tuesday night. I would argue Tuesday start against the Pirates was probably one of the better ones that we have seen from him. But if you look at each of these guys, Liberatore, McGreevy, May we know is not going to anywhere. He is going to be a part of this rotation. He's the slam dunk. But when you look at the other ones, they all are guaranteed for at least the next couple of years to be a part of this rotation. Dylan, we had the conversation in the offseason of, is 2026 the final chance for Andre Pallante? And we both said yes. So that is why I am going to lean more so on the side of, if Hunter Dobbins holds his own in this stretch in a couple of starts, I think that he's going to force his way into the rotation. It has nothing to do with Andre Pallante. It's more so to do with the trajectory of where the St. Louis Cardinals are going. So that is why I sit where I do with the Hunter Dobbins and Andre Pallante. Does anyone have any final thoughts on the battle between those guys before we move on?
I do agree completely, Ethan. When you look at when the Cardinals want to compete, Andre Pallante, in my view, isn't a part of that. I mean, like we said, they want to be a strikeout team. They don't want to be this pitch to contact, and Andre Pallante represents that himself. He is the definition of a ground ball, pitch to contact type of guy. And he also just doesn't have the upside that someone like Hunter Dobbins has. So on one hand, do you want to give Hunter Dobbins that rotation spot and just see what he can do, give him that experience, and hopefully he takes it and runs with it? The other side of that, which is the less fun side, is what do you do with Pallante then? Right. You don't send him to Memphis. Like, he has nothing to prove there. I don't view him as someone that's like a long reliever in the bullpen. I mean, I think he's a starting pitcher, and it is what it is. So it just becomes an uncomfortable, like, where do you put him? If you want to trade Pallante, I don't know what value he'd really have. Sending him down or putting him in the bullpen certainly isn't boosting his stock if you don't want him to be a part of your future. So it's a tough situation because you want to show off your guys if you potentially want to move them. We didn't really talk about this, but maybe if the Cardinals fall out of it and you don't view Dustin May as an extension candidate, maybe he's a trade deadline piece and that opens up a spot for Dobbins. There's lots of things that could happen. It's just, right now, when you look at Pallante, like, what is taking him out of the rotation do? I get that's not the fun answer, and you want to see Dobbins every fifth time around the rotation. But it's just like, I don't know how you really make that work without sending someone down, and I don't get what sending down any of these guys really does.
I don't think that Andre Pallante is going to end up in Memphis either, and then I don't even think he has any options remaining. So I doubt that is even a choice for you. The option would be sending him to the bullpen, which is so much easier to say than it is to actually do in this situation specifically, but in most situations. And let's be reminded of this as well. The Cardinals still don't have a load of depth when it comes to starting pitching. Now that Richard Fitz is done for the year, due to having to have season-ending surgery to address a lat strain, the Cardinals' starting pitching depth becomes a little bit more thin. You have 6 guys right now that I think you can say, yes, slam dunk, we feel good about them being able to be in a rotation. After that, it becomes a little bit of a question mark. There's a couple of guys in Memphis that you could say maybe in the running for that. Bruce Zimmerman is a guy that has some major league experience that they brought in for that very reason. Quinn Matthews has been okay, but I don't think that you feel like in a prospect of his caliber, I don't think you feel great about sending him up at this point. And then the other one is Bryson Motts, who was your minor league pitcher of the year last year in the Cardinals organization, and he has carried his success from AA to AAA to start off the season. So he has been very good, but he only has 5 or 6 starts in the minors or in AAA up to this point. So I do understand that there is a very little pitching depth. If this were to happen, then it would be a situation of Pallante has to at least stay on the major league roster, on the 26-man roster. It would be difficult to make it work right now, especially with the chance that Dustin May does get traded. But it certainly, like you said, is tempting, especially if Hunter Dobbins looks really sharp in these first handful of outings, especially because you've seen it in the stretch of games before. He isn't coming into this season like Michael McGreevy was, having only made 2 major league starts. It's still a small sample size relatively, but he's been able to do it in a stretch of games at the major league level. That's why I think I look at him and I say, yes, I want Hunter Dobbins in this rotation if things look good in this 17-game stretch. But we're going to have to wait and see. Any final comments on, I know I mentioned Richard Fitts, just how much that stings the depth of this team. Anyone that intrigues you that could also be have the potential for getting a start at the major league level this year?
Not for me. I think the guys you mentioned are the ones that would be quasi knocking on the door, but they're not really major league level. I wouldn't think. Matthews has been hovering around 4.5, 5 ERA in his early goings here, and a WHIP north of 1.5, which is not good numbers for Memphis if you want them to translate to the major league level. And then you look at other guys that are higher up on the prospect list in the Cardinals organization, and Brandon Clark is a guy, and he's not going to be ready this season most likely. And you mentioned Bryson Motts, but as you mentioned, also small sample size, and we're kind of getting down to the weeds at that point. So you don't have someone knocking on the door, in my opinion, the way you did Michael McGreevy a couple seasons ago. So I'm good with this. I mean, even Henderson is starting the season on the 60-day IL. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his first name so I don't screw it up. But
Eshawn Henderson.
Thank you. So, and then even a guy like Tink Hence was pretty high up in our organization a few years ago, but he's probably going to have to transition to a bullpen role if he even wants to make it to the major league level. He's at an ERA north of 8 at the moment right now. So nobody immediately screams, jumps off the page as, hey, this is additional depth if we keep Hunter Dobbins in the picture.
Yeah, I hope we see Bryson Motts this year. I think he's been really good so far this year. He was good last year. I think at some point he deserves a shot at the major league level, especially if guys continue to struggle, if injuries happen, if trades happen, whatever the case may be. I think we'll probably see Motts in 2026. I think it would be a disappointment if we don't see Quinn Matthews in 2026. Obviously, he's walking everybody, and that's the big thing right now. But we know who Quinn Matthews can be. He can be a guy that is a mid to frontline starter for you. So I think given his 2024, which was just great, obviously last year was a step back, and he continues to struggle a bit this year. It would be disappointing if Quinn Matthews, who's already 25 years old, by the way, isn't in the majors this year. And then a sleeper that I just want to throw out there that I don't think it's impossible that we see in 2026 is the switch pitcher, Gerangelo Saincha, who's mostly a righty, but we did see him switch pitch recently. I do think if he performs well in Springfield, gets the call to Memphis, and has success there, I wouldn't be surprised if he is a Cardinal possibly in September in 2026.
Let's go ahead and dive into the bullpen for the Cardinals. We certainly did our due diligence on the starting rotation, but before that, we're going to take a quick pause. On the other side, is the bullpen's sluggish start to the year a concern? Right here on the Loose Sports Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Loose Sports Talk podcast on STL Sports Central. Appreciate you all watching with us on YouTube, on STL Sports Central's YouTube, or on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Ethan Hannaford, Dylan Hampel, and Kyle Siksta as we transition to the St. Louis Cardinals' slow start from their bullpen in 2026. There's been good, there's been and there's been really bad, and it kind of combines into this messy thing that you're not really sure how to break down. Am I that far off there, Kyle?
No, it's tough to really break down, like you said, tough to diagnose because there's guys that have been great. You look at Riley O'Brien, who's been incredible at the back end. That's probably why you're winning all these close games is Riley O'Brien. Jojo Romero as well, who has given up a couple runs lately, but he's Jojo. We know what we're getting with those two. But then you look elsewhere. Soriano's been good. He's been a nice surprise, another possible late inning guy. But outside of that, I guess Graceffo, I don't want to leave him out. I don't want to lump those three as the only three good guys. But Graceffo's been great. Outside of that, it's been ugly. You look at Swanson, who's struggled. That's someone you expect to be a late inning guy for the rest of the year. You look at Stanek, who's kind of struggled despite throwing super hard late in games. He just hasn't really come together the way you expected. It'll be interesting because we got guys like we talked about earlier, young guys coming up. What will this bullpen look like? Will changes be made? I don't know what's going to happen. But right now, you don't really feel comfortable handing a lead over to this bullpen unless it's O'Brien or Romero.
We know that he has been good at points. You mentioned several guys that have been relatively solid this year in large part. The problem is that when it's been bad, it's been ultra bad, and that is creating some combined numbers that just are not very good league-wide. The Cardinals bottom 6 in team ERA. They are bottom 3 in expected ERA. They are 26th in expected FIP. They're not getting a lot of strikeouts either. They are second last in Major League Baseball, specific to bullpen, with 7.36 strikeouts per 9 innings. When they have guys on base, they are scoring. The Cardinals' left on base percentage is 29th in baseball as well, and that's something that's a big stat for bullpens, right? Are you able to handle guys on base well? And the Cardinals haven't been able to do that in the early going of 2026. You mentioned several pieces, Kyle, just a moment ago, and I want to kind of break down the bullpen as a whole. And that doesn't mean that we're going to have time to get into the specifics with every single player, but I guess more so what my question is here, based off of what the expectations were for this bullpen going into 2026, I think we can all agree they were pretty high. I personally thought that was going to be the strength of the team. Hasn't really proven to be, and I'm not sure if it still is. I don't think, at least as of now, it is. But where does your concern fall on the panic meter right now, Dylan? I'll start with you.
I'd say I was in a different camp than you coming into this season. I wasn't overly optimistic about this bullpen heading into the season, but it even turned out differently than I anticipated so far, where the pieces I expected to do well have underperformed, and then some of the guys that I wasn't as invested in have overperformed so far, as you guys mentioned, looking specifically at Gordon Graceffo and that 1.26 ERA. So I would say that my concern level is probably I'd put it on a 7.5 out of 10, just because I think that this bullpen, I wasn't expecting to be stellar coming into the season, but it's not going to be a successful, it's going to be hard to even be a 500 ball club, in my opinion, if you don't have even a semi-stable bullpen. And so I think as you continue to have starter, struggles, as we mentioned, that bullpen just continues to be further and further tapped and exhausted. And so, I mean, especially from the left-handed side, I don't trust Justin Brule in a high leverage situation further than I could throw him. So I think that it would have to be, your starters have to pick it up. So as we talked about ad nauseum, but my concern level is high. I mean, my biggest surprise with specifics has been Matt Swanson, as we talked about. And I mean, I'm going to reiterate some numbers that I talked about in our opening day episode that we did with Bernie. I mean, coming off of last season in 2025, Matt Swanson had a 1.94 ERA in 60 1/3 innings pitched, 68 strikeouts, and a 2.13 ERA plus. And if you're unaware, league average ERA plus is 100. So he was more than double the league average, and he had a whip of 0.88, and he was in the 91st percentile in expected batting average. So far this season, he has had an ERA north of 10 in 14 2/3 innings pitched. He's had 13 strikeouts and a 38 ERA plus, which is much lower than league average, as you can discern, and a whip north of 2.1. But the thing that's most concerning to me is his expected batting average against last season, which was in the 91st percentile, is now the first percentile in the league. He is the worst percentile in the league in expected batting average at 331 is what people are expected to hit against him. And his strikeout rate has also dropped from the upper 80th percentile to the 23rd percentile in baseball. So concerning numbers from a guy, as you guys said, you want it to be a high leverage piece. It's early in the season, but I mean, you have low strikeouts from guys that have strikeout ability. You have George Soriano in this bullpen. You have Ryan Stanek. You have Riley O'Brien. O'Brien is carrying the load, as you guys mentioned, but lot of question marks if your strikeout guys aren't striking people out.
In terms of the panic meter, I'm probably a little lower than you are, Dylan. I'm probably around like a 5 or 6, I would say. If we're talking strictly winning ball games, it'd go a little higher. But I mean, this year we already know it's about seeing guys and what they can do in the back end of the bullpen. I think if the Cardinals possibly fall out of contention as the year goes, which I certainly hope doesn't happen, and a possible Riley O'Brien trade happens, a possible JoJo Romero trade happens, then we're talking about just guys gaining closing experience possibly later in the year. And we're not really looking for just who's going to help us win right now. If we are talking about that, I think the second lefty spot behind JoJo is a big concern. I mean, Ryan Stanek hasn't been great. You look at someone like Ryan Stanek, you look at the bottom half of the bullpen, and Matt Swanson, like you said, he's someone that was expected to be a back-end option, and he just hasn't been that. Is a Memphis trip in order for him? I could see it just to work some things out and see him back hopefully sooner rather than later. But I guess going back to the original point, I was in Camp Hannaford, so to speak, that the bullpen was going to be a big strength of this team coming into the 2026 season, and it just hasn't been that. If Swanson can figure it out and we end up holding on to O'Brien and Romero late in the season, I think they can return to form. Soriano, I think, has been good. He's just had that one blow-up outing in Houston, which the Cardinals ended up winning that game anyway. Graceffo's been great, and Ryan Fernandez has been a nice little surprise since he's been recalled as well. He is striking guys out, by the way. We saw him strike out 4 on Monday night coming out of the pen in that win over the Pirates. So there hasn't been that many strikeouts. Sorry I'm laboring on with this answer, but I am not that worried. But I guess we'll see what happens. Ethan, what do you think?
I would say first off that Camp Hannaford is a place that is most of the time up in the clouds. It's a good life. The problem is that when you fall pretty hard, as this bullpen has and as my expectations for them have. No, I kid. I would say that I am probably in a similar spot to you, Kyle. I would go even a little bit lower. I would say I am in the 4.5 to 5 range right now. And I based my panic on a circle of trust meter for every single guy. Where do they fall within or outside of my circle of trust? And I'm only really going to dive in on one guy specifically as to why I think they're there. And I'll just briefly explain the rest. Right now, in the heart of my circle is Riley O'Brien, JoJo Romero, and George Soriano. Those are my guys that I feel great about early in the year. They are my rock. They are my everything. And then I got Gordon Graceffo, who I think has been very good to start off the year. And I like what I'm seeing, but it has been mostly in games that they are losing in and in low leverage appearances for the most part. That isn't to say it hasn't been any better. It's just to say, where does he fall within my circle of trust? I would put him more so on the outer edge, but still inside the circle. He's in, but he still has a little bit of work to do to get closer to the heart. Just outside of the circle right now is Ryan Stanek and Matt Swanson. And if you're thinking, Matt Swanson, he's just outside of it? Yes, because 1, he's very young. 2, the last couple of outings have looked a little bit better for him. A lot more soft contact has been produced. And 3, we know what he was last year. He's still so young in his major league career. We know what the ability is, and that's why I'm hopeful for Matt Swanson that he's going to be able to work himself into the circle eventually. Ryan Stanek's the guy I'm going to go into detail on, because even though he is just outside of my circle, because he has been getting a lot of high leverage opportunities, and he hasn't looked bad in all of them. I think there's been some opportunities where he's looked really good, and you're like, okay, that's the guy that we signed this offseason that I expected to get. The problem is that when you look at what Stanek did last year, this really shouldn't be that much of a surprise that he's off to a slow start this year. His expected ERA is in the 39th percentile this year. Last year was in the 26th percentile. His average exit velo, guys' average exit velo against Ryan Stanek this year is 93 miles per hour. That's in the 4th percentile of baseball. Last year was in the 22nd percentile. In the last 2 years, he's had walk rates in the bottom 6 percentile of baseball. His barrel rates have been bad both this year and last year, a little bit better this year than it was last year. Hard hit rate, both bad this year and last year. Ground ball rate, similar. This is a guy that's not coming off of a banger season. This is not a guy in 2025 that was an extremely reliable piece in Major League Baseball. So why would I all of a sudden be absolutely flabbergasted that he's having another at least poor start to the season? That's why my concern level is a little bit higher for Ryan Stanek, because the Cardinals added him with the expectation that he was going to be a piece that they would be able to semi-consistently rely on in high leverage spots. He was the closer on opening day for a reason. Yes, they were trying to get a feel and gauge what this bullpen was going to look like, but that should tell you what they thought of Ryan Stanek going into the year. He's had a lot of high leverage opportunities, continues to, because no one else has really proven worthy of the opportunity at this point, and he has historically been a very good relief pitcher in Major League Baseball, so I understand why they've been rolling with him, but you don't feel great about where he is. So I have him just outside of the circle, largely because of what he has done historically in his Major League career. I'm hoping he can find a version of himself that we have seen in years past, not specifically 2025 past. Not as far as you'd think is my next category of circle. I have Ryan Fernandez in there, specifically because of what we've seen in the couple of outings. Very low leverage, but it's been good. We know that he's done it at the Major League level before. Could we find that Ryan Fernandez again? I don't think it's as far as people think. And then, no disrespect, but Justin Brule is he's not very close to the circle. I'll just put it that way right now. Not very close to the circle. But even then, I named 4 guys in the circle. I have 3 of them that I think aren't very far and could be contributing pieces to the bullpen. I'm not saying all of them are going to work out, but what if all of a sudden, rather than 4 guys performing well in your bullpen, it was 6? And 5 of them were guys that were consistently in mid to high leverage. Then all of a sudden things change a little bit in this conversation. So I'm not there yet. I'm not panicking. Like I said, Camp Hannaford tends to be a place that is pretty high in the clouds often. I'm trying to hold on to the clouds right now. That's really what I'm trying to do, Dylan. So we'll see where it goes from here. But I think that there is reason to not completely lose all hope for this bullpen. Now, if Riley O'Brien, Jojo Romero, some of these guys get shipped at the deadline, then we're going to be having an interesting conversation in a few months, because I think that is potentially very likely that could be happening, but that is a little bit farther down the road. Gentlemen, we have been talking for almost an hour. It is time to wrap. Any final thoughts before we put a bow on it?
I'll tell you what, coming into recording tonight, I was not expecting to hear Circle of Trust one time, let alone so many times, but that'll have to be a recurring metric by which we measure the Cardinals season. We'll reevaluate the Hannaford Circle of Trust as the season progresses. We get into the dog days, past the deadline. That circle may be pretty empty. There may not be very many people in that Circle of Trust, as you mentioned, but that is that's the metric for the Cardinals to be measured by, I guess, is the Hannaford Circle of Trust. So that's my takeaway.
It sounds like this is going to have to be a conversation that's continued on, because I don't think Dylan agrees with my Circle of Trust. But you know what? That's okay. There will be other opportunities in upcoming episodes.
Yeah, I might have a hairpin of trust. I don't know if I have a full circle, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, as you said.
Kyle, final thoughts.
I love the Circle of Trust. I don't think we need to limit this just to the bullpen. We could talk about the lineup. We could talk about the rotation. Who's in the Circle of Trust when it comes to these aspects of the Cardinals team? I love it.
There you have it. Kyle Siksta, Dylan Hampel. I'm Ethan Hannaford, the Loose Sports Talk podcast. Like and subscribe to STL Sports Central on YouTube. Follow us on our social medias, Instagram, X, and Facebook at Loose Sports Talk _. We're about a month into the year, and we'll maybe have, even in the next episode, a better idea of who these St. Louis Cardinals are and how they respond to some adversity against some very good teams in Major League Baseball. Much more to come in upcoming episodes. But for now, episode number 109, that's a wrap.